Hello everyone, welcome to today's Facebook Live. I have with me Caroline Harridence today, and we're going to be talking about everything to do with app advisory in your firm. So how to develop an app advisory service with Caroline. So Caroline is a specialist in app advisory. Not only does she run her own practice, she also helps other accountants to develop their app offering in their firm. So without much ado, Caroline, over to you. Just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself, your background, what you're doing, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so hi, yeah, and that's right. So I now run my own accountancy practice, but before then, I used to, many years ago, probably about 15, 16 years ago, I ran my own business then where I was finance director for some small businesses. Then I went overseas with the family. So when I went over, I had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an 8-month-old. So I had my hands quite full to begin with, but we lived over in Australia for 5 years, and that's where I got introduced to Xero. Then when we came back, I worked for a top 20 firm, went in as head of outsourcing, and then moved into a pure cloud role with the responsibility of moving the Peterborough office to begin with onto the cloud, mostly off the back of MTD. And then did it strategy-wise for the whole firm, so all 11 offices. Then I was partner in a Xero-only practice for a while, and now I've set up on my own. And so help accountants and also do FD services and general accountancy services for SMEs. And I'm also editor of the Digital Accountancy magazine as well.
Brilliant. So in terms of where did your journey begin in terms of the whole app side of things? So I guess you had some experience of that when you were working for the top 20 firm. And when did you then decide that, yes, this is the area that you really want to kind of get involved in and start to help others in? How did that come about?
I was quite lucky, really, because when I was working in the big practice, they hadn't got a cloud service offering at all. So I was quite lucky there because I came over, and I mean, I picked the firm because I loved Xero, and I didn't really know much about the apps then, and it was quite new over here then. And then I was quite lucky there because we obviously had quite a wide mix of clients, and I just really got into it there and then really developed it. So when I started this other role where I was partner, it was brilliant because we were using so many apps. I mean, I went from that firm to this firm, and it was just like, my goodness, I was just learning and really interested in them all. I was on forums, and then got involved with the Digital Accountancy show and the magazine. And it's just sort of the area I love, and helping other accountants just kind of came about really because people asked questions and can you help, and it just kind of, I never really thought about doing it, but then it just kind of landed really, and I really enjoy it. So yeah, I'm still active on a lot of the forums and love to help people. So yeah, that's really how it came about.
And are you finding that many accountants are, I mean, for the accountants that you see and talk to and helping, where are they generally on their journey when it comes to apps? Because I mean, I know from my experience, there are some clients and some, I mean, because I work with accountants as well, I know there are some accountants who haven't even started the kind of the journey to get onto Xero and QuickBooks at all. They're starting now. Some have been doing it for 10 years, and there's a whole host of accountants in between. What are your experiences of working with accountants in terms of how far they are in their journey when it comes to developing a digital practice?
Most of the ones that I come across are on cloud of some description. Some of them most of them have got the core software in place. Some of them have got a few apps. Some of them have got none. And then also, so the sort of the key bits that I sort of seem to get involved with is that you've got ones with the core apps. Some of them will have Receipt Bank and Xero or QuickBooks or what have you, and nothing else. And then some of them have got some sort of practice management software, but it's not really doing anything, or they think they've grown out of what they were using. But very few of them have got anything on the reporting side of it. A lot of them come along because they know they need to do something and they're not very sure where to start, which is completely understandable because it is a bit of a minefield. But most accountants come along, they've started, they've got their core software in place, and they want to do more, and usually they want to sort out their internal processes as well, but they just haven't got a system in place. And a lot of them have been using, Excel for their practice management, so they're now looking at growing the firm, and they realize they've got to look at the workflows and things with that side of it.
That's right. So if you're watching, do you have any questions for us when it comes to apps? Perhaps you're well into your journey in terms of becoming a digital practice. Do you have any questions around what other apps you should be pursuing, whether you should have a specific tech stack that you should be rolling out to clients? What if you want to find out, what our preferences in terms of which apps we are talking to clients about and helping accountants to implement, let us know your questions. So Caroline, in terms of what are your favorites then when it comes to apps? So if you're going into an accountancy practice and they haven't yet started their journey, where do you tell them, which software do you tell them to choose? Is it Xero? Is it QuickBooks? Is it Free Agent? What is it?
Try to be really neutral, because I have used them all, and I do, but I mean, my practice is Xero only, but I do think a lot of that comes down to which one you learn first. I mean, you don't really hear, well, you don't hear about QuickBooks when you live in Australia, and I lived in Australia, so I mean, I learned Xero, and I knew Xero first of all. And when I moved over here, the firm I was working for, in the office we were in, we didn't use QuickBooks at all, and then probably a couple of years in, we started using QuickBooks, and I can hand on heart say every single person in that office hated QuickBooks because they all like Xero, but that was the one you learned the first. But I do prefer Xero, just basically because of the apps. It allows, well, lots of other reasons, but it allows you to do so much more with the apps, and you can, especially if you've got larger clients or more complicated clients, you can move them from like Sage 200 onto Xero and put in the apps, and you can get an equivalent system. So there's a lot of potential you can do with the app. So Xero does tend to be my preference. But when it comes to invoice processing, I will give them the choice. I've been quite lucky. I've used Auto Entry, I've used Receipt Bank, I've used HubDoc. So, they've all got pros and cons. I use Receipt Bank, but that's because that's my preference. But Auto Entry is a really good product as well. So it's trying to remain as neutral as possible. But obviously, I do have my favorites that I use. But my tip with every app that you do use is to use every little bit of it that you possibly can, because subscription costs can get really, really high. And if you don't want to be using a couple of different pieces of software that you're not using well, I would probably say your core ones to look at is get something to stop manual input of your invoices. So you need some sort of OCR software. So if you pick Receipt Bank, use it, use every little function of it, try and get it as automated as possible. Xero, that's the other part of it. Xero, people forget about Xero. So they talk about automation and we need to, Zapier this. And get Xero working properly. Have you got bank feeds? Have you got bank rules? Are you using, automated invoice reminders? Have you got Go Cardless? All these sorts of things. That, there's a lot you can do with Xero. Xero and Receipt Bank, there's an awful lot you can do there, because you can also write reports in Xero. So that's all automated as well. And then the sort of three key bits for me would always be something to get the information in and something to get the information out. So you might be, if you don't do much in the way of cash flow forecasting, you might think, well, can I add that now? What can I use? And if you use something like Futurely or Float or anything like that, make sure you know it and you learn it so you're getting the most out of it. And don't just keep adding apps or changing apps. That's the other one as well. When something comes along that's good in one app, give it 6 months, it'll probably come into the one that you're already using. So it's actually just to really know your products and know them really well and start small and then build up. So I wouldn't be going out and, having these massive app maps that you see now with all these pictures of all these different apps. I wouldn't rush out and do that. I would just take each one and build it. Because you could, even just with Xero, one thing going in and one thing going out, automate it, especially if you can put in your practice management software, and if you've got some proposal writing software, you can have a really neat little system that can do an awful lot more and do it efficiently. And that's a really good starting point. So that's how I encourage people to do it, because you can have astronomical costs if you go out, especially if you take a partner programs and you go out and you have empty licenses. It can get really, really expensive every month. So it's really monitoring the costs and keeping a really close eye on that, because you take your eye off it. I mean, I know from working in a big firm, I did an analysis where I added up all the software, and the number of unused licenses and the associated cost was significant.
Okay, so that's great. Thank you. I think you're right in terms of app overwhelm. It's easy, it's easy to kind of jump on the next the shiny new thing, the toy that comes out, and everyone is saying now we live in an age where there's so much noise on social media. One person says, "Oh, this product is great," and that product is great, and you get FOMO to say, "Oh, I need to go and check out what that reporting app does against this one." So I think you're right, and at the same strategy that we've kind of followed, that we've picked one and we've just got that core tech stack in place, be it Xero, QuickBooks, and the receipt bank or auto entry. We use auto entry, and then a management reporting one. So there's a question here actually from Neil to say, what are your favorite apps for management reporting production? So there's quite a few on the market. Which ones are your favorites?
Well, I do like Fathom. I like the graphics. To be fair, Fathom was one I came across when I was living in Australia. They're actually in the same suburb as I was in Brisbane. And I really like Fathom because the reports just live, and they're very, very graphical, very easy to understand. Another one that I'm quite liking is Sift, which I think you use. Do you, Riz? I think I've seen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sift is a nice one as well. It's really coming on. It's got a lot of functions. Other ways you can do it though is if you've got a forecasting tool as well, so something like Futurely, they're now producing quite nice little reports. It can be quite customizable, but for management reporting, Fathom and Sift would be the ones I would be looking at the moment. I really like them. Very, very good images, very easy to understand, and Fathom have really added on. They've done quite a lot over the last 12 months. So yeah,
excellent, great. Any other question, guys? Let us know whilst Caroline is here. So in terms of, because of the, I guess, kind of going back to fundamentals, that the apps have been created to kind of make our life easier, to help us with delivering services to our clients in terms of, understanding the numbers better, for us to be able to work faster and more efficiently. But fundamentally, in terms of our role is still to advise clients and to help them achieve their business goals and to solve their problems and their pain points and become their trusted advisor. The apps can help us do that, or they can hinder us to do that. Because I think, the apps, in terms of which app we use, I don't think that clients really care which apps we use. All they care about is what they get at the end of it. All they care about is, are you there? Are you there at the end of the phone? Are you giving me some decent commentary from my management accounts that I can make meaningful decisions? Are you helping me build a forecast, whatever app it's in, but even if it's Excel, that will enable me to know whether I'm going to run out of cash in 6 months and therefore I need to take corrective action by applying for a loan or whatever the case may be. So that said, when you're talking to accountants, how do you kind of communicate that need to balance the case in terms of, yes, by all means, get apps in to make your processes more efficient, but also be cognizant that the apps are not the be all and end all from a client's perspective. They don't care what apps we use. It's about what's in it for them and what are we doing for them and how are we helping them.
Well, I totally agree. So from my point of view, even when I'm talking to clients, I don't name the apps. And if I'm sending out pictures, I don't name the apps. I tend to just have an orange circle that says invoice processing, something like that. Because you're right, it doesn't mean anything to them. So when you're going out to the accountants, the important point to tell them when they're actually speaking to their clients and helping them speak to their clients is that you have to see their pain point, understand what their pain points are, and then show them that putting in these apps will actually resolve this pain. So it's actually showing that you've got a solution to the problem they're going through. So that if that is, spending ages manually inputting invoices, if they can't manage their credit control, you have to show them that. But the other thing I would say is I say it with clients and I say it to accountants. You go in, and if you're going to put in accounting software, so say you go in and you see a perfect client where you think, oh, they would be perfect for a really good, credit control system. They need some really good reporting. And you go in and you can see that they're nervous and they're stalling and they're taking ages to make decisions. It is an ongoing process. So that's something I always say to the clients and the accountants as well. When you go in and you do even a small implementation, which could grow into something bigger, start small and tell your client, it's an evolving process. Tell them that the apps are changing, say that there's constantly going to be updates. For example, I'll give you one. I put quite a few care homes onto Xero. They have got, all of them, dreadful accounts receivables, do an awful lot manually, and we're quite reluctant to move over. So I had there were two brothers who had 5 care homes, and they missed every meeting to talk about cloud. They missed about 3 meetings, eventually pinned them down. They decided to move to Xero, and you could just tell they were really nervous. So all we did was put in Xero to begin with. And then over the course of 18 months, sort of introduce more and let them see more. And by the end of the 18 months, one of the directors came in. He came in one day, I remember it, into a meeting with me. He came in with his mobile phone. He said, I want to know what I can do on my mobile phone. What can I prove on my mobile phone? And if you just looked at where he'd started to where he was there, because we'd implemented everything slowly and got them comfortable with everything before we moved on to the next thing, they were much more receptive, to the point where he was coming in and he was wanting to do stuff and he was wanting to see how they could improve things. And you're actually really working with them. Another really good way to work with your clients that we discovered as well. So your clients who are on cloud, we used to run seminars every month in the office, and we used to have our clients in for them. And it was around the time of MTD. So I always used to go after the tax people and get 20 minutes on using cloud software. And I always used to make a bit of a fuss, because using cloud software isn't to basically tick the boxes for VAT. It gives you a whole load of other benefits. So one day I turned it around and said, I want to go first. You guys go second. So I did. And I did testimonials and I did stories. And I went up there and I told case studies. And we had clients sitting in there in that room that had been using Xero for a while. And they wanted Futurely afterward. They wanted expense management software. And that really works well. And I know one firm who did a lot in the farming community. They actually did one all on farming, but they actually had people in the audience where they put them onto the cloud and put the apps in. So they had figured and things in there. So when questions came, these guys could then say, oh, this is what we did, come and chat to us. And that's a really good way of actually promoting it within your firm and with your current client base. So it worked really well.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. When you talk about case studies or what has worked, that's quite powerful, because it then becomes real. So that story of the care homes, definitely rings true. So in terms of, are there any other case study stories that you have in terms of when you have implemented a cloud-based solution and it has tangibly saved the client lots of time that you kind of measured, or lots of money? Are there any other stories that you can tell around that?
Yeah, we had one where they were on Sage, and they used every drop of Sage. I've never seen anybody use every single thing that they were using. And they sell products. So the wife, on quite large scale as well, because when I heard they make doorstops as one of those other things. I heard they made that, went along and met them thinking it would just be a small firm, but it was quite big. So with those people, everything was just so manual and so disorganized, and the stock was disorganized. And they wanted, because at the moment they just sold into the shops. So they had everything. They did the design over here, had it manufactured in China, brought the products back into the UK, and then sold it onto the shops. And they wanted to open it up so that they had a web-based presence as well. And he was an accountant, and he was really, really reluctant to move over. But we moved them over. We got the processes sorted. We got receipt bank in place. And I met him. His wife was a designer. I bumped into them one day in town, and she just came over and she just said, "I just want to thank you." And I said, "Well, you've just given us so much time back." Said month end, he's not in the office doing the VAT, at the last minute each quarter. Month end, it's going smoothly. And then we did that. It took us a while because it was quite, he, like I said, he had everything. He still used Xero for stock. He refused to put in a stock system, but he may have done that now. But they had to have every invoice template customized. We had to have approval max put in for approval systems. We put receipt bank in. We got a reporting tool in. So that all helped, an automated thing. And then it was just about the time I was leaving, we were then working with a web developing company in a shop. So we could get a shop on there. Now I've seen they've got the shop in place as well. So it's got its online presence as well. So that was a good one. I actually did quite a bit with farmers because we had quite a big agri group. And I had one guy in, and he moved from, he used to come in with a big red cash book every sort of end of every year. And we moved him on to QuickBooks, and I had him in halfway through the year. And I remember him sitting there, and he just stopped. He just folded his arms and looked at me in the meeting. I thought, God, what have I done? And he just said, that's the first time in 20 years I have got a clue what my turnover is partway through the year. He said, I've never seen it before. And, it's things like that. It just makes it all worthwhile, really. So sort of, you're saving people's time, giving them more insight into their figures, and really helping them develop their business.
Definitely. No, I agree. And it's mind-boggling how, even in 2020, there are still businesses out there who are keeping manual records in red cash book. It's unbelievable. We took one on about a year ago. It's amazing in the digital world and age that we live in. There are still people writing down their takings in a big red book. Which is madness. And we took this client on. He had a few convenience stores, and within putting him onto cloud within a couple of quarters, we found they'd actually overpaid VAT by 10 grand. I mean,
wow.
It's just phenomenal, because there's no way you can properly reconcile everything using these red cash books. It's just madness. It's just crazy. So in terms of how you work with clients, so from what I'm gauging, you're going to go in and you put them onto cloud, and then you train them to kind of get on with it and use it, or do you then take on board the full finance function? Because what I found, and what I talk about a lot, is the big opportunity for accountants to actually take on board the full finance function and provide that full service from bookkeeper to FD and anything in between, depending on what the client requires from us. But to actually have that full service offering, because that's where the value comes. When you're working with them in real time, you're doing the books, you're the one they're going to be calling, you'll be calling them for information. So that dialogue just helps for a much more fruitful and beneficial, accountant-client relationship. So is that similar to how you operate?
Yeah, that is. So obviously when I worked in the top 20 firm, we had clients of all different sizes, and we had a massive portfolio. So we didn't work like that there. But where I was partner before, that was how we worked. You did have some clients that came in slightly earlier, but the majority of them, we ran the full finance function, and that's what I now do. But with all of them, quite a good tip actually, it's with all of the clients that we had where I worked before, they had receipt bank. So everybody had to have Xero and had receipt bank. We didn't deal with any other accounting package, but none of them had actual access to receipt bank. So you could submit your expenses and you could submit your invoices, but none of them actually got into receipt bank. We didn't give any of them access. Things did differ once you got to Xero, but for all of them, they had receipt bank. All of them had Xero, and for all of them, we did the VAT returns. And that just meant that we made sure that everything was going into Xero in the right place and all the VAT was right. And we just did the VAT return just as a check to make sure they hadn't gone in and fiddled with anything. But now the firm that I run, we just do everything. And it was surprising actually, because you often think, especially with the bigger firms, I had one client, and it was a high-tech startup, and they had an outsourced FD who was brought in by the venture capital company, so like the non-exec director. And we went in, and they had a finance manager as well, a small finance team, and we went in, and they were on zero, but we streamlined all the processes. So they had everything under the sun. They had Soldo, they had Expensify, they had Receipt Bank, they had Approval Max, they had just loads of different stuff. And we sort of built it up, and it was quite a chunky fee. And then they had R&D tax credits as well. And it was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we just expected them to take it back at some point. And they came in, and we sort of said, you know, you've got a finance team, you've got a finance director, we're doing all this for you. Presumably you're going to want this back. And they just said no. They said, it's much for us to take it back, we'd need more staff. My finance manager can really get on with the budgeting. They were doing a lot of shares and revaluations and things like that, so she could get all involved with that. So we actually kept it. And quite often I think accountants think, I'm going to go in, give them this system, and they're just going to take it and run it themselves, but often they don't want to. And if they can see the efficiencies and you get it running well, it's going to be cheaper for them to use you than them to hire staff to do it. So it's something definitely to bear in mind. And I think this is the area we're going to see really grow over the next sort of 5 or 2 or 3 years even, actually. And I'm beginning to see it now with some other colleagues I've got in the industry are saying that we're developing this outsourced finance function. Because also when COVID hit, a few accountants contacted me and they said, what are we going to do? How do we do accounts payable? And they hadn't thought about that before, because they had the credit card in the safe, and they used to have to take that out. The partner used to sign it out and then check it, and it's a very manual process. And I think that is one of the areas I can see accounts payable becoming a bigger area for accountants going forward, because you've got the apps that can manage it, and they've got a few more that are rumored to be coming onto the scene as well. So you've got your Teleroo and your Credex and things like that, which can do it all for you. And I think that will be quite a big area going forward as well, because now you can just do the whole thing and you can do it really well. And credit control, I think credit control, especially in the sort of near future, unfortunately, is going to become a big area. And the more you can automate, the better, really, because nobody likes doing it. And you still need human intervention with it. You can't just rely on emails, but you can automate a lot of it. So yeah, there's some really good tools out there for that.
Yeah, that's right. No, I couldn't agree with you more. Certainly something that we are doing, and something that I'm kind of helping other accountants with as well. And in terms of, I think you said about the, and this is how we can communicate our value and communicate kind of our price with the value, to say, when you get to a certain size, when a business gets to a certain size, say between that sort of $500,000 to $5 million range, they need additional finance input, but they can't really afford to hire an FD, because an FD, is going to cost them 120 grand, or, a proportion of that if it's part-time. So what they do is they compromise. They might get somebody in a bit junior, which means that they're kind of missing out on the added value stuff that an FD can bring. Or if they bring in an FD and the FD is then doing menial stuff, like bookkeeping, then they're kind of wasting their money on spending, so much on an FD to do that kind of stuff. So I think we are very well positioned to provide that full finance function support much more cost effectively than businesses can hire their own staff to do it. So, and tech has enabled us to do that. Because a typical finance function, like you say, if they've got a bookkeeper and a finance manager and an FD, that's into the hundreds of thousands. And we can absolutely do that for a fraction of the cost. So big area. And I'm glad you agree in terms of, our position as accountants, as forward thinking and embracing tech and apps to enable us to provide that much more cost effectively than clients going out to engage their own team. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we're kind of out of time, normally about half an hour or so. Have you got any closing remarks you want to add, Caroline? I don't think there are any more questions.
My close or my tip would be that, especially if there's a few people, is to have some champions, have some cloud champions within your team, and to keep up to date with the software that you've got. So say you're using 3 apps and there's 6 of you in the team, 2 of you are sort of responsible for keeping up to date with those apps and bringing that to the table every team meeting if there's been an update, and doing it that way. And the other key tip I've always, 2, one's process. Make sure you've got a process, you follow that process, and all your clients follow the same process, because otherwise it's impossible to scale it. And the other thing is, when you're doing something, think how you could do it better, because that often you begin to think about all your workflows and your automations and things, and just keeping that. Well, we used to have team meetings, and we used to have it so somebody had to have an idea of how to do something better. And I mean, we weren't zapping things or anything like that, and the integrations have improved significantly. Especially with your internal processes, think about how you can improve your workflows, because there's so much you can actually automate out there, even just with what you've got. I mean, if you're using, you know, Go Proposal and Zero and things like that, there's a lot you can do even without, you know, getting into Zapier and things as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Caroline, for coming on and sharing your wisdom. If you're watching this on the recording, then feel free to ask any questions in the comments on the group, and hopefully Caroline, I'm sure, will help answer them and share her experiences so that we can all learn together. But thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you very much again, Caroline. Take care, and we'll catch up soon.